All right, economics students, the following lesson is on money and inflation. And if we do this flipped classroom this way, we can free up a little time in class to do the more interesting things and show you various ways to calculate this, do some practice together. So the topic of today's lesson, money and inflation, cash rules everything around me. So what is money? If you guys have ever looked on Craigslist and seen someone who doesn't want to receive dollars for something that they are selling, but they want to swap items, that is called a barter system. The barter system is alive and well in the economy. Whenever money fails or people want to avoid paying taxes, they'll try to trade stuff. And it requires the double coincidence of wants. You can imagine me going into SA and trying to buy gas, and they say, well, what do you have to offer? And I say, I can teach you about Augustine's notion of free will. And they say, not interested. Well, if they're not interested, I can't get gas. So money makes this all a whole lot simpler. Money allows us to avoid the double coincidence of wants. And for it to work well, we want money that is portable, meaning you can easily carry it. We want it that is durable, meaning it doesn't wear out quickly. It is standard and uniform, hard to copy, meaning it's relatively scarce, and we want it to maintain its stable value. Now, the reason money works so well is that it is widely acceptable. I'll show you in class these links to internet websites of societies that used huge stones, also societies that had huge, heavy coins. One common mistake that students make is that they think our money is linked to gold. It is not. We have what is called fiat money, and fiat meaning a decree or a statement. Money has value really because we believe it has a value, and we all trust in the system. So it does not have a link to gold any longer. The functions of money, we'll watch a brief lesson on this in class, but money is used as a medium of exchange, as a store of value, and as a unit of account. Funny commercials have been done to show unit of account, like when they try to account for things in terms of bacon double cheeseburgers as $1 each. Anyway, it's an agreed upon measure that simply makes it easy to be able to tell what's worth more. A cup of coffee costs $3, a water bottle costs $1. You would say that cup of coffee is worth 3 water bottles. You can now measure things and compare what they cost. The other thing, our money serves the function of storing value. It has its worth into the future, not just today. You could earn money now that you want to save up for college. And then the liquid money that you use every day, the money in your wallet, you use to exchange for goods and services, and it eliminates the barter system, the need for the double coincidence of wants. The smallest pool of money that we measure, and these, not the functions of money, but these are the definitions of money, right? Notice the change. Economists measure 3 different pools, M1, M2, and M3. In reality, though, M3 is very difficult to measure, and so if you figure it out, you'll probably win a Nobel Prize. In fact, M1 and probably too. But M1 is the stuff that you have in your pocket. It gets called token money. Token money. Paper coins. It's really liquid, meaning it flows throughout the economy, and it's exemplified by your checkable deposits and traveler's checks. Excuse me. The next pool of money is called M2, and notice it includes all of M1 plus what is called near money, and those are savings accounts or small-time deposits, which get called CDs, certificate of deposits. And I'll tell you more about those in a minute. Money market mutual funds, those would all be examples. And the key idea here is that your interest rate goes up the less liquid the money. Okay, interest rate goes up the less liquid the money. So in your M1, you don't get very much interest at all for lending that money to the bank. But if you give it to them in a savings account and make it a little less liquid, meaning they'll have it for a little longer and they require you to withdraw certain amounts or over a certain time, then they'll pay you more money for using your money, the rental rate on money, interest rates. So those are the definitions of money. Inflation then is defined as a sustained increase in the average price level of all goods and services produced in an economy. If you were to tell me, Mr. Hoffner, the price of snowboards just went up, is that inflation? And I would say no. That means more people demand snowboards at every price. This is when you would have increases in all the goods and services produced in the economy. The way we measure this is with something called the Consumer Price Index. And an index is a comparison of a specific group of prices to those same prices in a base year, a designated reference. So when you hear that something is indexed, like Social Security is indexed, it means that it is adjusted for inflation every year to account for the loss in purchasing power that those dollars have. What we're specifically looking at is what economists call the market basket, and that is the total price of goods and services weighted according to the quantities commonly bought by consumers. In other words, what does the average household buy? And then we compare that over time to get the Consumer Price Index. What's included in the Consumer Price Index? These are the broad categories: food and beverage, housing, apparel, transportation, medical care, recreation, education, and then you can see other, including your funeral expenses down here. I will show you a large picture of this in class. The New York Times has a nice layout of this. The idea is we track 80,000 things every month to see if they're getting more or less expensive. The way you then calculate inflation is to say, what is the market basket cost in the current year over the cost of the market basket in the base year? Then you multiply that times 100. So you could say, for example, all of those things, 80,000 things, cost $200 in the current year. In the base year, they cost $100. So you'd have 200 divided by 100 is 2 times 100. You'd have a CPI of 200. Now, the CPI is what you use to calculate inflation. And that's the next thing. You could do the difference in CPIs over the earlier CPI times 100 to get the inflation rate. So let's say that was your CPI. Your initial CPI was 100. The earlier CPI was 100. You can see this is a real easy example. But you'd have 100 over 100, which is 1 times 100. And you could see that in this instance, you had a 100% increase in price when the index went to 200 instead of 100. And what's good about CPI? What does it do well? Well, it gives us a basic way of measuring changes in price over time. And we will practice calculating it together in class. There's a good activity on this. But as you can already tell, even though you measure 80,000 things, you may be a vegan and you don't eat meat, you don't drink milk. Well, those things are included in CPI. So it doesn't reflect what individuals do. Okay. Another thing, it doesn't always show improvements in quality. You may see a television included in the market basket, and you'd say, well, a television in 2013 is very different from a television from 1957. And that's true. Prices do convey quality, but they don't always show the full extent of the change. The other issue is that we rarely update it. And the reason we rarely update it is because we want it to be an accurate measure. And if you kept changing what is in the basket, you would lose some of the value of its information. Okay, hanging in there, 9.5 minutes now. Why is CPI important? One, we use it to adjust our wages. When you receive a cost of living adjustment, that's what COLA stands for, that is due to inflation. If CPI shows inflation went up 2%, a lot of companies particularly union. If you have a union contract, you have a COLA clause within it, so your wage can be adjusted upward. Another way we use CPI is to adjust federal spending. So you guys all pay Social Security payroll taxes because you're paying benefits out to people. You also pay taxes in other ways. Those rates are adjusted every year with CPI, so it affects how much you are paying. And the last thing, we use it to adjust GDP. And this gets to the distinction between real and nominal that I mentioned the other day. And I promised we'd come back to. That says nominal. That looks terrible. Nominal. Okay, the simplest way that I know how to describe this, nominal, meaning name only, is just current dollars. And when I say unadjusted, I mean unadjusted for inflation. And real means how much do we really have? How much do we really have? Okay, it is adjusted for inflation. And we're right at the end. Here's an example then. You could take real GDP and divide it by that year's nominal GDP, or to get, let me start again. Real GDP can be found by dividing the nominal GDP by the price index in hundredths. So if the price index, which we were working on earlier, is 175, in hundredths that's 1.75, and in this instance you'd take $13.3 trillion and divide it by 2.02 and say almost half of this increase in GDP was due to inflation, because the real amount is 6.5 trillion. And that's the end.